completely agree. And I think that was the reason for that question was to really highlight that, because I think often it's I can't get enough or I want as much as I can get. And it actually neither thing is the right outcome. What's the right outcome is what strategically
Yes.
makes a difference. How is this going to impact the performance of the business? And how can we do it with a level of confidence that actually whatever we take is going to be able to fulfill those needs? So
Yes, and the confidence is a very good point. That's what I try to explain. If you have the confidence that you can sell it, fine, you go for it. But you need to have this conversation before placing the PO to you.
good morning and welcome to another Making It Happen podcast with Sims International. I'm Kevin Howse. I'm the hosting today. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Sims. Today, I'm delighted once again to be joined by Marco Mezger, long-term, I guess what's the right word for that? Long-term guest, long-term friend, and a memory expert extraordinaire for many, many years in the market. Welcome, Marco.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be back.
It's nice to have you back again. And I guess more than ever, this conversation is very topical, given the backdrop of everything that's happening in our collective markets. I think just for a bit of an intro, for those that don't know us, obviously Sims are a 35-year in age memory specialist expert distributor. We represent several semiconductors as well as third-party module manufacturers such as Intelligent Memory, obviously yourselves on the industrial side of the business. And I personally have been in this industry for 22 years. So I've seen a lot of cycles throughout that time. I know you're celebrating a big milestone. I saw you on LinkedIn that you posted 8 years from Taiwan. So it's over the
Yes.
year celebrating Chinese New Year of the Horse. So many congratulations on that.
Thank you.
How's life in Taiwan and amongst these times?
Yeah, I think it's the center of the semiconductor industry. That brought me basically to Taiwan or to Taipei specifically. I love it here. I moved here. This is something what I call home right now. And if you want to know what's going on in semiconductor, Taipei is a very good place. Also, you have several memory vendors who are here in the ecosystem. You have a very big portion of the AI ecosystem. So I'm very happy to be able to call Taipei now a home for more than 8 years for me. And for me, it's a little bit longer in the industry. You mentioned 22 years. That's already quite a long time. I'm already over 30 years in the industry, mainly in the memory area. And you highlighted before intelligent memory, kind of in the industrial memory space.
Awesome. No, thank you. And Taipei is a fantastic city. It's one of my favorite in the world, actually. I've been a few times, very much enjoy it. And I guess the reason for the intro is for anybody that doesn't know us, I guess collectively what we're saying is we don't have the answers in amongst what's happening today. But between us, we have over 50 years experience in the market. And I think it's safe to say we're both in agreement that we've never witnessed times like we're in at the moment in terms of what's happening around supply,
Correct.
price, and demand. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, I've made some notes. We've seen obviously allocation tightening, forward inventory revisions for Q2 dramatically reduced from the semiconductors. Manufacturers are signaling constrained supply and potentially into 2027. And in some cases, vendors are pausing new orders for intake while they reassess the capacity before then reallocating whatever is available. I guess for me today, rather than kind of visiting the headlines, which you follow any of the major news outlets, whether it be Financial Times reporting on relevant semiconductor share prices or BBC talking about the memory shortage or such words such as Ramageddon that I've seen floated around. I think where I really want to focus the conversation is about what this means for boards, what it means for
Mhm.
CEOs, and what it means for CFOs, because ultimately they're the people making capital and risk decisions today that will impact not only short term, but the long to medium term outlook, which, if predictions are true and we don't have a crystal ball, could be prolonged, could be into the back of 2027. And I think we're hearing and seeing more from our customers that the old ways of working aren't fit for purpose in this new world that we're having to adapt to. So perhaps quite an interesting topic just to discuss from that
Mhm.
side of things. So
Yeah.
sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I think, as you said, there are some rules which are changed at the moment, driven by manufacturer, and they are driven basically by the AI frenzy. It's pretty clear this is going on now for quite some time. I mean, just yesterday, Nvidia reported the latest numbers again, like a massive jump comparing to the last quarter, and even more massive jump, comparing to last year. This everybody calms the people down who were thinking the A bubble will burst. It's not right now. We will see down the road how there will be a hard landing or a soft landing. But that's definitely one of the biggest impact to the current situation, where I think everybody in the supply or in the value chain has to have talks with their customers. Yeah? So I think if your customers talking with you and you telling them, hey, things have changed, some of the cost of the chips have been raised like 10 times. Capital is more intense, what is needed, parts need to be shipped. These conversations need to go downstream, right? So you
Yeah,
basically then your customer needs to tell to their customer, because it will not go back to 2023 pricing, because we hear also customers there referring to this. It's cyclical, it's memory, it's commodity. It's all correct years ago that this was kind of the playbook. But now we have another component which is structural, and I think also geopolitical. So before the AI frenzy, geopolitics was a little bit higher from impact on the industry. Now it's a little bit lower. I would say now it's really mainly driven because of a structural change. And there you need to basically adjust the business model. And I think if we're addressing this to an audience who need to plan this way ahead, like you said, 26, 27. I definitely can tell the people you need to put capital aside. You
yeah,
need to put capital aside for higher pricing. And you also need to put capital aside in order to enable you to get allocation.
yeah, totally agree. And actually, you've touched on one of the first questions I was going to ask there. But for me, this isn't another memory cycle. We've been through many across our time in the industry. It will always remain in cycles where we get the peaks and troughs, supply and demand, and prices impacted. This is a structurally different semiconductor environment, and albeit there will always retain an element of cycle behavior because of the nature of the commodity component. It feels like memory is no longer a commodity. It's now a necessity. And I think that's what's happening, right? It's for boards, it's a really important distinction because it's always been something that's just available and it is readily available, and there are options. Today, that's not the case, and for the foreseeable, that's not going to change. We are not going to go back, as you said, to the top point in time when the semiconductors had a price where they were losing money because the fabs were in operation 24/7, couldn't turn off, there wasn't enough demand to meet supply. That's not the case anymore. And actually, it's very likely over the next period of time, things are going to get more difficult, not less.
Right. And I think to put to the audience a little bit in perspective, is it is expected this year that the revenue from the memory companies will be double as the revenue from all foundries in the world. And this includes
Yeah,
TSMC, SMIC, UMC. We are
yeah,
talking about potentially $500 billion revenue on memory. And I think it's quite impressive because you need to understand that actually for NAND, the wafer output, the wafer quantity is from Samsung and SK Hynix in reality reduced by a single digit, 3 to 5% less wafer, but still some bit growth because they focus on server NAND, like server SSDs.
yeah,
And for the DRAM, there's also not like a lot of new capacity coming on. In fact, there is a lot of older technology basically pushed out and then focus on a lot on HBM. So everything what you see on growth there is mainly because of ASP, not because of new capacity. And you also need to be very careful what you see in LinkedIn or on some news where people are saying, oh, now Micron made the New York fab and they bought Power Chip fab and this will solve all the problems. No, it will not solve the problems. I can tell you this. I mean, New York is delayed now because of 6 people in the USA who are suing Micron and want to make sure, that the environment is protected. So it's similar what we have in Germany when we make new fabs.
Yeah.
So, people have an impact, have a delay, and this means the capacity will not come. The capacity will come back again. And that's why I think you always will have a cyclical component in the memory market. The technology for the DRAM is, at least for the standard DRAMs, low power DRAM, DDR4, DDR5, is a commodity, but the way how it is treated is almost like gold at the moment. Yeah.
Yes.
So and
Yeah.
and unfortunately also in terms of the pricing. And that's probably very, very unusual. Because people are used when they look at the pricing 2023. Oh, I buy the chips for such a low price, pricing will come back. Please be reminded, in that year, all the memory companies together, they lost over 30 billion US dollar. Not gonna happen again that they
Yeah.
want to lose that money. So they are very, very disciplined. This is probably the difference what I see in the 30 years of the memory industry, that all the memory manufacturers are very, very disciplined with CapEx, with the investment, what they are doing, despite the fact that they could sell probably 3, 4, 5, or 10 times more to some of the hyperscalers. They keep it very, very tight because they know if they open the floodgates or the production gates, then pricing would collapse again, and they are in the same cyclical dilemma. And that's a reality where all the OEMs have to face. They have to engage with their trusted partner, long-term partners, normally. And then I think what they need to build resilience. So they need to be able to have like several approvals. They need to look, okay, and understand that they can not only rely on one manufacturer. They need to look if they have several opportunities that then, for example, as a partner, you can offer them, okay, I have availability here. I need down payment, I need prepayment. So there are completely new business models, which also in the industry upstream is also being pushed. Yeah. Also
Yeah.
the module houses now, they need to pay upfront to the manufacturers because they say, you want supply, then basically you need to give me a down payment. So everybody in the chain is doing this. Nobody is taking advantage of this. I think we just want to help customers. And I think on C-level, people have to understand, if their purchasing team, if the engineering team comes, I need new approval, purchasing says, I need capital for this. This is real. This is
Yeah.
absolutely real. And in 30 years, I've not seen something like this. I have also to deal with it.
Yeah, and that's all very valid points. Your point around production and output, yeah, it's going to take a long time for these fabs to come online, and even then, it may only meet the increasing demand. So keep us at a level playing
Correct.
field, right? And then the other side of that is actually, and I hadn't realized this, and this was news to me. Take a 122 terabyte SSD because capacities are increasing so much. I heard that 122 terabyte SSD is the equivalent to one wafer. So we've not seen that before, right?
Mhm.
Because generally speaking, multiple SSDs per wafer, you're now at one SSD, one wafer. So as the capacities increase, you need then further wafer output to even address that. So lots of things that are probably squeezing supply, um, compounded by hard disk drive shortages as well, certainly on the flash side around SSD, having an impact. So I guess just reframing this back to the board level conversation, because you hit on some really important notes there. If supply extends into 26, 27, should boards be rethinking their capital allocation priorities then, specifically around the amount of inventory they're holding, their long-term arrangements they have with partners, and strategic pre-commitments?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, they should look into the BOM of their product. Then they should identify how much today is the share of the memory for the SSD and the DRAM basically combined. So I think if you look at certain products, this is 50% and above. Of course, if you look into a car, it's maybe between 2 and 3%.
Yeah,
But I think in reality, this is like having a self-awareness, okay, having some understanding, okay, how is this for me important, right? Do I have a product where this is minor? And I think at the moment, I cannot imagine that anywhere there and anywhere of a product that there is a minor impact because we have pricing, we have EOLs, we have product change notifications, we have complete process nodes just vanishing.
Yeah.
So this is something, everything comes together at the moment. And this is everybody who is listening to this and has their teams, they should go back and have a conversation with them. They must have a conversation and they must take action in order to be able to have product output. I mean, we're dealing with companies also who are publicly traded. If they cannot meet their quota, if they cannot basically ship their products, they are losing revenue. Not because the customer does not want to buy, because they are not getting the parts. And these are not only smaller players, these are also bigger players. So having these conversations and understand that you want to go there in a partnership through with them together and look what's the value for everybody, what everybody can bring in. I think this is very, very important. And then also have the conversations not only upstream to suppliers, but also downstream to customers. They also need to be aware of that this cannot be all absorbed, because that's also a very important question, because different industries have a different elasticity, what they can accept in pricing. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
say you go, I don't know, you go in defense, you go in medical, maybe you have a wider elasticity. You go, for example, into consumer is very, very limited. And to
Yeah.
be honest, Kevin, I think we will see also some exodus of companies because they will not be able to survive. So I hear in Asia, for example, in China, some of the mobile phone companies, they already cannot take anymore the low power DDR4 pricing because it's razor thin margins, it's consumer products, and they just cannot produce because they would use on every single smartphone in competition with a Samsung or an Apple who have a different leverage.
Yeah, that's a really, really valid point. And I think on the consumer side, we'll see more of that as you look at SI integration. Again, if you're used to building 20,000 systems a year, but your ASPs have increased to nearly double that as a result of the memory component costs and perhaps GPU or CPU, because also they're increasing, you end up with a product that is nearly two, three times the cost to your customer. Are you still going to
Yes.
sell 20,000 systems, or actually will that in its own curtail demand? Yeah,
Yes.
you've got a really, and we've got lots of empathy because the procurement teams have got to sit there and make decisions to go, well, we've always historically done this, so we need enough
Yeah.
product to support it, but we've got
Right.
max inventory levels we can hold. We've got credit limits that are restrictive based on we've now paying five times the amount for a product, and we can't bring it all
Right.
in at once. And we're trying to forecast for demand that was based on previous year's sales without these cost implications that have either been passed through to customers or not.
Hmm.
So I think, yeah, all in all, from a board level perspective, these are serious conversations, and I think the best advice I could give based on what you were talking about, that downstream communication is
Yes.
involve the distribution partner specialists, involve the vendors, because there is nobody that is going to articulate what's happening in this market with the level of authority and confidence needed, because we are so close to all of these partners. We have as much information as anybody out there. We will be
Yeah.
able to help impartially just advise on what are the best steps. Now, boards and the customers will need to make a decision on what's the right approach for them, but we can at least give them the background that will help them make some informed decisions.
Yeah. So I think we have exceeded a threshold where we're talking about 10 cents, 30 cents, 50 cents, or maybe $1 change on certain products to basically 10 or hundreds of dollars for memory modules, which I think no OEM in the world can easily absorb.
Yeah.
So instead of fighting back to the memory vendors, you need to give it downstream and tell to your customers, hey, I can support you, but we need to have a serious conversation, at least for the moment. And I think I'm with you. I also see 2026 and probably also 2027, where I don't see really meaningful capacity coming back. And I think the demand, just a number what I saw today, which I think just you need to imagine. Last year, the spend from the big eight cloud provider was around about 411 billion US dollar. This year, it's over 700 billion. And I can tell you probably 50%, or I think at least 40% is memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. On some of the server you mentioned for system integrator, I would say by today, the BOM is probably more than 50% is DRAM module and the SSDs because the logics are not increasing so much. Yeah? So it's the memory modules and the SSD, and that's a huge challenge, I'm sure, also for the system integrators.
Well, let's take that. That's a really good practical example, right? So let's take that. If you're a board, and we'll use the server example, but this could apply to industrial, this could apply to OEM, this could apply to electronic contract manufacturing. It could apply to the e-tailers and the retailers and the
Yep.
resellers equally. But let's use that system integration piece on servers. So currently today, so take previously, you may have manufactured a server. The cost of that server may have been £2,000, let's call it.
Mhm.
For fully populated with DRAM and SSD, those SSDs may have cost you £100 and the DRAM may have cost you equivalent per stick. In today's world, take a 64 gig RDIMM, we've seen prices go from, I think, around £350 to today being quoted well in excess of £2,000. Now, if I'm a system builder and I typically build 100 servers and each one of those has 8 bits of DRAM, 4 SSDs with it, obviously that's manageable in terms of an inventory perspective, in terms of credit lines, and in terms of cash flow in the old world. In the new world, those significant price increases make that really difficult. And that's one of the areas we're seeing more and more pressure, which is why I think this is such an important board level conversation, is how well aligned are these company CFOs with the CFOs at the companies that are supplying them and with their customers to enable
Yes.
that. How do we manage inventory? How do we manage cash flow? How do we manage these decisions? Because maybe the demand is forecast, but you need to forecast the demand, because if you don't do that now, you don't get the allocation. So there needs to be some provision for inventory. Inventory becomes the new cash, because without it,
Right.
you can't sell. But you're also in a scenario where it then has knock-on implications for how do we manage that? What happens if we don't sell it? What happens to our credit lines? How do we finance this?
Right. And you need to talk downstream to the end customer, not you, but your customer who's selling the system. Hey guys, this is gonna happen. You know, the elasticity. We see now pricing which are double for the whole system or triple. You know, this is, I can get you the parts, but this is where it's going. Do we have a deal? Can we do this? Because the whole supply chain is basically built up on this. The risk
Yeah,
can also for these people who buy the memory ICs or memory modules from you, they cannot take all the burden. It's impossible. Nobody at the moment can take this burden. The big guys, the three big guys, Micron, Samsung, SK Hynix, Kioxia, of course, SanDisk, they have deep pockets right now. They have these huge customers. They can dictate. But I think everybody else in the supply chain needs to work together in order to be able to produce products, to manage cash flow. Again, we are seeing 10 to 15 times the pricing of products than what we see in the beginning of last year. And this has an impact on everybody's cash flow. And we need to understand the elasticity. What would be the worst if we would have double bookings and other kind of things, which basically make the products even more scarce, right? So that you have even the impression that there is more and more needed, but in reality, it's only for stock building. I have the impression right now that there is much less inventory build up because actually there are just not enough parts. So the customers who want at the moment parts, they really need it for production. And that's also what they should look. They should not speculate. They should look downstream. Okay, what do you need? Let's sit together. Let's make a plan. Let's go back and let's execute on this. And this is really not only a decision or a discussion with procurement and engineering. I think this is a C-level discussion because this is serious money which is involved in that.
totally agree. And actually, consider the implications at the customer's customer. You've probably got some pretty heavy contracts in place, some SLAs in place, customer experience levels that you need to adhere to. All of
Yeah,
those things are at risk if we
yeah.
don't get this strategy right. And I guess in the new world, the strategy is that there is no guarantees in this. There is no guarantee of supply. There is no guarantee of price in this current environment, because in
Mhm.
the nicest possible way, the area of the business that we represent as a collective here on the call is the channel
Hmm.
part of the business. The channel part of the business
Hmm.
servicing integrators, builders, OEMs, CEMs, typically tier two and down, right? So
Hmm.
from our perspective, what could even be perceived previously as, yeah, that's really good demand, it's good levels of business, is now insignificant in comparison at semiconductor levels in terms of what's happening everywhere else. So that doesn't
Hmm.
automatically guarantee you a seat at the table in terms of getting allocation. What will
Yes,
guarantee you allocation is, or say won't guarantee you, or put you in the best place, is
yeah,
having a structured forecast, having clear lines of communication, being agile, being able to commit quickly and with funds if required in order to communicate and work on a strategic allocation process rather than having to go out on the spot market and find things because it's just not going to be there.
correct. Yes. And if it's there, it's even more ridiculous. I mean, we still have even a bigger spread of when customers coming to authorized channels and they're getting allocation there. It's still more reasonable than what you see on the on the open market. Because open market is going completely through the roof, and then you also don't know the like if it's real, because if there's so much money involved, I would always recommend highly, to go via authorized distributors, authorized resources, and building up the relationship there, because these are the partners where you can trust the most.
Yeah, and I think one of the calls we made recently, very similar, is actually for patients. Look,
Hmm.
from our side, it's kind of a mixture of both, right? You're going to need to be very patient because not all of the answers are going to be immediately available. So we can accept orders, can't guarantee price, can't guarantee stock,
Hmm.
but can work in time to get those answers. They won't always be available that day or even that week. But what we would then need on the other end of that is not just patience, you're then also going to need understanding and flexibility because the rules are changing daily. If product does
Yes,
become available, decisions are going to have to be quicker made in order to get that allocation because you're now fighting in a part of global allocation. It's
correct.
obviously split down regionally, but it's
Yeah.
moving so quickly. So I think for board level advice here is if you've got the
And
strategy
one
in
more thing,
place.
Kevin,
Yeah, sorry.
one more very important thing, funds need to be ready.
Yes.
The funds need to be
Yeah.
ready, because if you say everything is ready, everything is fine, you say, okay, I have the parts, please help, because it's a big order, because of the prices increase, and they say, oh, we don't have the funds, we first need to look. This is all in parallel. That's what I mean, where everybody must have the conversation now. Even you cannot guarantee really like delivery or pricing or whatever. It's all in good faith. And you are in a better position because you are an authorized reseller. You talk to manufacturers and you do this since decades, like you mentioned. So I think Sims is around since a very long time. You build up relationship with a lot of these manufacturers for a very, very long time. So you are not somebody who is just opportunistic to make something happen. You always have the customer in your center. And so that's, I think, where you normally are in a very good position, also in a trustful position with customers, to help the best possible outcome for them. But you cannot switch off the market mechanism, which is
Yeah.
working properly since a few months. It's not possible, also not for you and not for me.
Well, I totally agree because as much as we're aiming this downstream, the same mechanics apply to us, right? So there are pressures across the business, and actually, that's the interesting part, and that's where I would really urge anybody at C level or at board level listening to this that has a significant reliance on memory and storage in terms of the outputs they deliver, whether it be systems or experience to their customers or services to their customers, to really evaluate this because that conversation around, well, how do we even finance? What mechanisms are available to us? What other ways can we look at doing things that we wouldn't normally do under a normal market condition? What levers
Mhm.
have we got that we can implement that will allow us to make decisions quickly if we need to? Because those companies that we're working with that are doing that are being very successful. They've
Mhm.
got to have the right downstream knowledge that actually, if we're going to make these decisions, there is also going to be demand for the product because you don't want to sit buying
Right.
product that's 5 times higher than we used to, tying up
Correct.
cash, not have the
Yeah.
demand. But
Yeah.
those that are perhaps unprepared, it seems like there's a lot of pressure building on the procurement teams and building on the customer experience teams, trying to and the sales team trying to manage the scenario. The bit that appears to be slightly lacking in my view, and it's a personal view, is that conversation between those teams, taking the knowledge from demand from customers into
Mhm.
into the board to actually get ahead of this and start to make meaningful progress in terms of the capabilities they have. Because not everybody's in the same boat where cash is a challenge. Some businesses
Mhm.
have ample cash, and that's not so much a problem, but perhaps they don't necessarily have the right understanding of the market. And really, just because you've got a cash also doesn't mean you're going to get the product. You have to be
Right.
willing, you have to be willing to communicate, willing to share forecasts, and be on that strategic partner list when it comes to allocation. Because if you're
Mhm.
not, ultimately you're just another speculative buyer. And the way we see it, and we're following suit with the semiconductor manufacturers, is they are
Mhm.
allocating based on communication and based on strategic response to what's happening in the market. So if companies
Correct.
aren't doing that, just because you've got the money doesn't mean allocation.
Yes, yeah, very well said. I fully agree with this because for these companies, they also understand looking down the road, there will be some softening coming in certain areas. There will be new capacity coming up, and they pick and choose already right now who could be potential customers in the future where we building up relationships, right? So I think that's why stay in communication, work together, help, to make second sources, third sources, or even four sources, if it's available, then you can maximize the opportunity to keep the production going. And so single source is not the right strategy in this type of market. You have no
Totally.
leverage on
Yeah.
pricing if you are single source.
Well, you have no leverage on pricing, but you have lack of options if it's not available. And actually, to your point there, I think we previously discussed, if the commercial impact of price increases, well, if you typically sell a 32 gig in your system, perhaps consider is a 16 gig appropriate? If you'd normally use a certain model number, well, actually, are there 3 or 4 variants that were within specifications that you can approve and test so you have that flexibility? So these are all things that
Right.
I think teams need to be considering. Um, I
And
guess,
even downsizing,
yeah,
you have a 32 gig, take a 16 gig because maybe this is better available. We see this across the board also on single components, then it's not 8 gig anymore, it's 4 gig. So all these discussions, all these creative discussions have to be made and everything has to be on the table. I really have to stress this. You have to be very open-minded and always think about, okay, how to navigate through there because this has never happened before in the memory industry to this extent. Yeah, I think we both agree on this, and I think
yeah.
also our customers or the people who are participating in this market would also agree on that.
No, totally agree. And I think from my side, I've got some quick fire questions. I think we kind of covered the board level start side of things. I
Sure.
think if anybody's got questions that has listened to this and we've resonated some points on that, I think I would encourage them to get in contact. Let's get certainly CFO to CFO contact because of the pressures it puts on cash flow, it puts on credit lines, etc. I think from a what do we buy and how often can we get it? Obviously, procurement teams working with vendors, working with ourselves to manage what demand looks like. But I have some quick fire questions. So I'm gonna be
Mhm.
looking to my left as I read through these to remind myself. Um,
Sure.
is doing nothing the biggest risk right now?
Yes.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Doing nothing is definitely a risk because then you are just pushed around. And if you are sitting there and hoping it goes back to 2023, I stressed this already 2 times, not gonna happen.
Brilliant. Thank you. Like that. Okay. Next question. Is underbuying more dangerous than overbuying?
Is underbuying more dangerous than overbuying? I mean, the goal for the customers is they want to get their production running, right? And I think when you overbuy means for me is like you have your production plan, but you want to take some extra buffer. But I would and to anyone I would recommend When you do the overbuy, make it very quickly into your standard selling. So this means like you can buy extra components, but you should make sure that downstream your customers are taking it. We have prices right now which continuously rise, but we know, Kevin, you and I know what the cost of these products for manufacturing is, and
Yep,
there's a huge disconnect. Okay, there's a huge disconnect, and this will compress again. So from my point of view, I would recommend to customer, if you can sell the finished product and you only know it if you have also like an order from your end customer, then go for it and work with your partners to get the extra allocation. I would not recommend to speculate.
totally agree. And I think that was the reason for that question was to really highlight that because I think often it's I can't get enough or I want as much as I can get. And it actually neither thing is the right outcome. What's the right outcome is what strategically
Yes.
makes a difference? How is this going to impact the performance of the business? And how can we do it with a level of confidence that actually whatever we take is going to be able to fulfill those needs? So I
Yes, and the confidence is a very good point. That's what I try to explain. If you have the confidence that you can sell it, fine, you go for it. But you need to have this conversation before placing the PO to you.
awesome. No, thank you. I'll ask one more. Let's choose a good one. Has the power balance permanently shifted towards the manufacturers?
That's the good one. This is now the glass bowl to look into. At the moment, it definitely looks like this. Okay. So I think if I look at the capacity, if I look what pricing we have to pay and what little pushback, I mean, actually you have no pushback, is possible at the moment. I think at the moment the power is definitely there. And I think SK Hynix, one of the top managers, I think recently just said we officially turned into a seller's market.
Yeah, I
I
read that.
think for him, you have to see how much pain they had in 2023, to be fair, yeah? Because the 30 billion was lost by these three main guys, and this is not sustainable. So all the purchasing people who basically have been able to buy the parts so cheap, well done. This is good, but it's not sustainable because if you basically drive your supplier out of business, it's also not good. We have already an oligopoly. So
Yep.
now, how long will they be in power, right? So I think even for HBM, HBM4E is more customized. It's not so many commodity style. HBM4 is still kind of commodity, but the big three will dictate about the pricing, at least for this year, for next year. And then I want to see how does it evolve on some legacy technologies, who will step in, who will have the cash, because now a lot of the memory companies, also in Taiwan, if you look at Nanya, if you look at Winbond, if you look at others, they have
Yep.
now more cash available, so they can buy more equipment. So this can shift again. I would never say never. I would never say, oh, now it shifts completely to manufacturer. But I think the short to midterm outlook definitely gives them leverage. Absolutely.
No, I totally agree. And I think it's important note because historically for the last 2 or 3 years, it's been the opposite. It's probably been a buyer's market as opposed to a seller's.
Yes.
Whilst I don't quite agree with the statement as strong as that, I think it just in preparing teams at board level or even at customer level, just to understand actually the mechanics here have changed. The dynamics are very different to what has played out over the previous cycles.
Yeah, and everybody can feel it. You talk to module houses in Taiwan, you talk to distributors, you talk to broadliners, you talk to specialists, you talk to smaller manufacturer. Everybody feel it. Nobody is immune against
Yeah.
this. And I think for me, it's very interesting to see how conversations are going. Conversations where 2, 3 years ago, if you would have told me this, they never would have been possible. They are possible now if you have a trustful relationship, and there it comes into play, like also for you and with Sims, you are long in the business. People have seen you in several ups and downs. If you address this with them, you can work something out because there's a mutual trust which is there. And I think this is very important in these times of the market conditions.
No, brilliant point. I totally agree. And I guess one final thing to wrap up. If you were you're a board member and you've got significant interest in memory and storage as a result of what you provide, what actions should they take in the next 90 days if they're not already?
Well, they need to put a task force together. So I think you need to have a memory task force in order to understand what's the impact on the bombs, and how many suppliers they have approved. Did they really approve already every possible supplier in order for the risk management? And they need to have capable people who know the memory market in order, to make the right decisions. But I think starting with a task force for this, you definitely it's mandatory for me.
Awesome. Very good point. Thank you, Marco. Really appreciate that. Well, it's been great speaking to you again. Hopefully, we've covered as much as we can without regurgitating the headlines that everybody is seeing all over LinkedIn and on social media posts, for example.
Right.
Really, really enjoyed the talk. Thank you, Marco. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye.